Reading through the Bible in a year, July 31st, Judges 14, Acts 18, Jeremiah 27, and Mark 13. Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Then he came up and told his father and mother, "I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife." But his father and mother said to him, "Is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all our people that you must go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, for she is right in my eyes." And his father and mother did not know that this was from Yahweh, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel. Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah. And behold, a young lion came toward him, roaring. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, as though he had, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. I've personally never torn a young goat, but apparently that's a thing. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. After some days he returned to take her. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion, and honey. He scraped it out into his hands and went on, eating as he went. And he came to his father and mother and gave some to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. So far, he's violated many of the laws of the Nazirite vow. You're not supposed to touch dead bodies. You're not supposed to go near dead things as a whole. And certainly you aren't supposed to marry outside of your people. Not necessarily a Nazirite vow, but that's certainly an Israelite custom, one given down by God. Continuing on. His father went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there, for so the young men used to do. And as soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said to them, "Let me now put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes." Then they said to him, "Well, put your riddle that we may hear it." And he said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet." In 3 days they could not solve the riddle. On the 4th day they said to Samson's wife, "Entice your husband. Entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us here to impoverish us?" And Samson's wife wept over him and said, You only hate me. You do not love me. You have put a riddle to my people, and you have not told me what it is." And he said to her, "Behold, I have not told my father or my mother, and should I tell you?" And she wept before him the 7 days that the feast lasted. And on the 7th day he told her, because she had pressed him hard. Then she told the riddle to her people. And the men of the city said to him on the 7th day, before the sun went down, "What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?" He said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle." And the Spirit of Yahweh rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town and took their spoil and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. That is all the notes to here. Moving on to Acts 18. After this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. And he found a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, recently come from Italy with his wife, Priscilla, because Claudius had commanded all the Jews to leave Rome, and he went to see them. And because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them and worked, for they were tent makers by trade. And he reasoned in the synagogues every Sabbath, and tried to persuade Jews and Greeks. When Silas and Timothy arrived from Macedonia, Paul was occupied with the word, testifying to the Jews that the Christ was Jesus. And when they opposed him and reviled him, he shook out his garments and said to them, "Your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles." And he left there and went to the house of a man named Titius Justus, a worshiper of God, and his house was next door to the synagogue. Crispus, a ruler of the synagogue, believed in the Lord, together with his entire household. And many of the Corinthians, hearing Paul, believed and were baptized. And the Lord said to Paul one night in a vision, "Do not be afraid, but go on speaking, and do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will attack you to harm you, for I have many in the city who are my people." And he stayed there 1 year and 6 months, teaching the word of God among them. But when Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, the Jews made a united attack on Paul and brought him before the tribunal, saying, "This man is persuading people to worship God contrary to the law." But when Paul was about to open his mouth, Gallio said to the Jews, If it were a matter of wrongdoing or vicious crime, O Jews, I would have reason to accept your complaint. But since it is a matter of questions about words and names in your own law, see to it yourselves. I refuse to be a judge of these things." And he drove them from the tribunal. And they all seized Sosthenes, the ruler of the synagogue, and beat him in front of the tribunal. But Gallio paid no attention to any of this. After this, Paul stayed many days longer, and then took leave of the brothers and set sail for Syria, and with him Prisca and Aquila. At Cenchreae he had cut his hair, for he was under a vow. When they came to Ephesus, and he left them there, but he himself went into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. When they asked him to stay for a longer period, he declined. But on taking leave of them, he said, "I will return to you if God wills." And he set sail from Ephesus. When he landed at Caesarea, he went up and greeted the church, "Hello, church," and then went down to Antioch. Spending some time there, he departed and went from one place to the next through the region of Galatia and Phrygia, strengthening all the disciples. Now, a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was an eloquent man, competent in the scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in spirit, he spoke and taught accurately the things concerning Jesus, though he only knew the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue. But when Prisca and Aquila heard him, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. When he wished to cross to Achaia, the brothers encouraged him and wrote to the disciples to welcome him. When he arrived, he greatly helped those who, through grace, had believed. For he powerfully refuted the Jews in public, showing by the scriptures that the Christ was Jesus. Bringing up the last notes here. There we go. All right, now move on to Jeremiah 27. In the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, this word came to Jeremiah from Yahweh. Thus Yahweh said to me, "Make yourselves straps and yoke bars and put them on your neck. Send word to the king of Edom, the king of Moab, the king of the sons of Ammon, the king of Tyre, and the king of Sidon by the hand of envoys who have come to Jerusalem, to Zedekiah the king of Judah. Give them this charge for their masters. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, this is what you shall say to your masters. It is I who by my great power and my outstretched arm have made the earth, with the men and animals that are on the earth, and I give it to whomever seems right to me. Now, I have given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and I have given him also to the beasts, I've given him also the beasts of the field to serve him. All the nations shall serve him, and his son and his grandson, until the time of his own land comes. Then many nations and great kings shall make him their slave. But if any nation or kingdom will not serve Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and put its neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon, I will punish that nation with the sword, with famine, and with pestilence. Again, that threefold destruction of God, declares Yahweh, until I have consumed it by his hand. So do not listen to your prophets, your diviners, your dreamers, your fortune tellers, or your sorcerers who are saying to you, you shall not serve the king of Babylon. For it is a lie that they are prophesying to you, with the result that you will be removed far from your land, and I will drive you out, and you shall perish. But any nation that will bring its neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon and serve him, I will leave on its own land, to work it and dwell there, declares Yahweh. To Zedekiah, king of Judah, I spoke in a like manner. Bring your necks under the yoke of the king of Babylon, and serve him and his people, and live. Why will you and your people die by the sword, by famine, and by pestilence, as Yahweh has spoken concerning any nation that will not serve the king of Babylon? Do not listen to the words of the prophets who are saying to you, you shall not serve the king of Babylon, for it is a lie that they are prophesying to you. I have not sent them, declares Yahweh, but they are prophesying falsely in my name, with the result that I will drive you out and you will perish, you and the prophets who are prophesying to you. Then I spoke to the priests and to all this people, saying, thus says Yahweh, do not listen to the words of your prophets who are prophesying. I'm trying to make sure I didn't lose my spot, which happens occasionally. Then I spoke to, I was in the right spot. Once again, this happens. Just pick it up and keep going. Verse 16. Then I spoke to the priests and to all this people, saying, thus says Yahweh, do not listen to the words of your prophets who are prophesying to you, saying, behold, the vessels of Yahweh's house will now shortly be brought back from Babylon. For it is a lie they are prophesying to you. Do not listen to them. Serve the king of Babylon and live. Why should this city become a desolation? If there are prophets, and if the word of Yahweh is with them, then let them intercede with Yahweh of hosts, that the vessels that are left in the house of Yahweh, in the house of the king of Judah, and in Jerusalem may not go to Babylon. For thus says Yahweh of hosts concerning the pillars, the sea, the stands, and all the rest of the vessels that are left in this city, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, did not take away, when he took into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and all the nobles of Judah and Jerusalem. This is when Rakshak, Beni, and Daniel all had gone over with this previous group. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, concerning the vessels that are left in the house of Yahweh, in the house of the king of Judah, and in Jerusalem. They shall be carried to Babylon and remain there until the day when I visit them, declares Yahweh. Then I will bring them back and restore them to this place. Once again, God showing that he is sovereign over all things. Including today in Mark chapter 13. And as Jesus came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, look, teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings. And Jesus said to him, do you see all these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. He sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple. Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign when all these things are about to be accomplished? Again, they're asking multiple questions. They think that it's one question. And Jesus began to say to them, meaning that he started here and told them other things, see that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. These are but the beginnings of the birth pains. But be on your guard, for they will deliver you over to councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake to bear witness before them. And the gospel must first be proclaimed to all nations. And when they bring you to trial and deliver you over, do not be anxious beforehand what you are to say, but say whatever is given you in that hour. For it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. And brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. When you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not to be, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down, nor enter his house to take anything out. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that it may not happen in winter. For in those days there will be such tribulation as has not been from the beginning of the creation that God created until now, and never will be. And if the Lord had not cut short the days, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, whom he chose, he shortened the days. And then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or look, there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, the elect. But be on guard. I have told you all things beforehand. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. We'll be back to that. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But concerning that day or hour, no one knows. Not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard. Keep awake, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a long journey, when he leaves home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore, stay awake. For you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly and find you asleep. And what I say to all, stay awake. I'm going to read the note from the ESV Study Bible. It is long, but it is very good concerning verse 30 here. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Begin. And again, this is the reason why I like the ESV Study Bible, because it approaches things from basically every possible direction. It talks about why they believe that it's one explanation over another, but they also show you all possible explanations that people have come to over time. Beginning now. Several interpretations have been offered for this difficult passage. First, some think this generation refers to the disciples who were alive when Jesus was speaking. And, quote, all these things, unquote, refers to the beginning, but not the completion of the sufferings described in verses 3 through 13. Others see, this is the second option, all these things as a prediction with multiple fulfillments. so that Jesus' disciples will be both, quote, this generation, unquote, that sees the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, and also those at the end of the age who see the events surrounding the abomination of desolation in verse 14. Third option, since the generation of in the Old Testament can mean people who have a certain quality, right? Others understand this generation to refer to either A, this generation of believers, to mean race. This is another sense of Greek, genea. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. This generation, yeah. Telling you, this happens. It's a large block of text. You look away, you look back, you don't lose your spot. Anyway, back to A, the explanation for this generation means something else. This generation of believers through the entire present age, as in the age of the church. B, to this evil generation that will remain until Christ returns to establish his kingdom. Cross-reference here, Matthew 12:45 and Luke 11:29. You can look those up on your own. Or 4, the fourth option now. Others, particularly dispensational interpreters, understand generation to mean race. This is another sense of the Greek genea, from which we get the term generation, and think it refers to the Jewish people who will not pass away until Christ returns. The fifth option, others understand this generation to mean the generation that sees all these things, namely the generation alive when the final period of the Great Tribulation begins. According to this view, the illustration of the fig tree in Mark 13:28, which we just read up here, shows that when the final events begin, Christ will come soon, just as, quote, these things, unquote, in verse 29 refers to events leading up to, but not including Christ's return. So verse 30, all these things, refers to the same events, that is, the events described in verses 3 through 13. Again, lots of ways to interpret this. You have to read through it and see which one makes the most sense to you and pray over it, where we come to our understanding on this. All right, that said, that is all the reading and all of the notes for today. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Behold, the word of the Lord.